everyone. Welcome back to the Growing Together podcast with me, Sonny Vasquez.
And me, Cesar Santos.
A podcast where we talk about everything under the sun related to growth and all that it encompasses. Today's episode is very exciting and we're going to talk about love. The L word.
L word.
It's the L word. But before we get into it, how are you feeling this morning, Cesar? It's a cozy little Sunday morning. Actually, technically, it's afternoon now, but it's cozy.
It's cozy. I mean, it looks like it's gonna pour outside. We're here in our studio. We got the shot set up.
He says studio, but this is literally the office that we work out of during the week too.
Studio slash like multi-camera room, whatever. But no, I mean, I'm good. I had a good weekend. With friends, and also had a chance to on our last podcast, if you didn't watch or hear it already, we had a chance to interview your CEO
well, it wasn't an interview, it was more of like a conversation, with him, which I thought was really exciting because I admire him. I think it's really cool like where our company is currently and like how he's kind of like gotten it to where it is, obviously with the help of like the team that we're growing. But that was really exciting. Yeah, we went out last night with some of my old friends from where I used to work, and I realized that I can't hang. Like, I'm 24, and if I'm out past like 11, I'm just tired, and it's just not. It's not that it's not fun. It's just that I'm chronically exhausted. So last night was rough. We got home at like 2 something, and I was like, man, I can't hang. I just need to sleep.
I was exhausted by the end of that.
We need to go home. We're just too tired for this
anymore.
I just feel old now. Whenever someone wants to go out at night, I'm like more of a brunch gal.
There's so much sketchy stuff that goes on like past 2 o'clock too. Like, people driving with their headlights on.
It's kind of scary. But so today's episode, as I mentioned earlier, is about love. I think obviously love in a couple different scenarios. Obviously you have love in a relationship. Like obviously I love you, you love me.
I love you, you love me.
Let's get together.
I knew you were gonna go with that.
But
I knew that was going that way too. I was just like, what in the world?
I started it and didn't have that intention, but I definitely started like piecing it together. But this is an important topic for me because I think there's a difference. Let's just start. I think there's a difference of loving someone and being in love with someone.
Yeah.
So like, you can love someone, but you can also not be in love with them, especially when it's a relationship. And I think this goes back, you mentioned this yesterday when we were kind of planning this podcast. I think this goes hand in hand with this is loving someone versus the idea of someone. Mm-hmm. I think that love can feel confusing, especially if you've never experienced what real love is. Mm-hmm. Like I remember when I was in like high school and even beginning of college before I met you, I was like crazy for the guys. Like I really wanted a boyfriend. I wanted like that knight in shining armor type of love. I had like grown up watching like every teen drama and like show that told me like what love is supposed to look like. And so I thought like whenever I liked a guy, I was almost sure. I was like, oh my God, I love them. I was like, this is the love of my life. And then like, obviously I met you and we started dating. And I remember literally, and I will say this when we get married too, the week I met Cesar, I was going through a lot. And I had been on like Tinder that whole time. And then I met you and I texted my roommates at the time and was like, I'm going to marry this man. And they were like, seriously? I was like, yeah. And now we're getting married.
I remember that. And when you told me that conversation that you, I think you showed it to me on your text thread. But back when you had your old phone that had the messages.
I still have it. I still have screenshots of the messages of where I told them I'm going to marry him. And then one of them was like, oh, he looks Peruvian. And I was like, so we were just talking about you. but yeah, it was the first time like that I realized like what the like actual love between like two people looked like. And I think that also goes back to like kind of how you grew up and how you see love, you know?
Yeah, I think a lot of it has to do. I mean, at least from what I mean, my opinion or what I think is your own family, like your own parents. If you grew up with two parents, like in the household, like you get a lot of what of like what you think love is by their obviously by their relationship, you know, and we can tend to. I mean, a lot of like I know a lot of psychologists would say like that has a huge effect on your kids, like how they see what love is based on your relationship with your spouse, obviously. So
And I mean, that can
yeah,
get into sketchy territory too because, you know, some parents don't have the best or healthiest relationship. So if
yeah,
that's how you see what love is, that's kind of what you accept as love. There's a quote from one of like my all-time favorite movies called The Perks of Being a Wallflower. And in it,
We accept the love we think we deserve.
so if you don't even think you deserve love, what you'll accept is much lower.
yeah, and then obviously that's a big not a motivator, but that's a big impact influence. Like is your family. Then there's like just a lot of like really old history, you know, of like there's different types of love. You know, I think you've heard of like agape and like and all these other
Yeah, like
like
sacrificial
Greek.
love
Like,
and like yeah, I think like obviously the way I love you is not the same way that I love my mom or I love my friends. Like, I like I feel like I do like love all of those people greatly, but it's in different ways
ways,
as
yeah.
is obviously. But I think that also kind of goes into like, we've done I think me and you have done this before, love language
Yeah,
test.
I remember that.
The way that we receive and like to get love. So like I know for Cesar, like you're more of like I think you're like physical touch and like
Mhm.
quality time together. And I think mine is also quality time and physical touch. And then there's some people who receive love through gifts.
Gifts,
And I
yeah.
think a lot of disconnect. And I think this also goes in like friendships too, not just like
Mhm.
relationships like between two individuals, but like friendships, is that sometimes like someone genuinely does care about you, but they don't know how to show you like love. They don't know how you're going to feel loved. And I think that's the biggest disconnect in some like relationships or friendships is the fact that we don't know how others want to be loved.
And if we don't know, then there's gonna be a huge disconnect there. Like even if it's like even a family member too. Like you know, if you're trying to conversate and create some kind of rapport or like mend something that was like once like good, like if that language isn't there, like hey, like do you really like do you really? It's one thing to say you care, but like do you actually show that you care and stuff like that. But that's a way to and some would say that's like you're not they're not showing that they actually love you because like of either certain actions they've taken or things they've said, like that's shown the opposite. You know, it kind of falls in the same realm, I think, at
Would you
least.
say that like in that situation, like case scenario, like someone could have like good intentions as they say and like they feel like they're showing that they care. Do you think it's on them to change how they show how they care or for the other person to understand that this is how they show love?
I think it's there has to be a mutual understanding. You know, um, there has to be the both parties have to see like because then you have to consider the other party too as well of what they think like the miscommunication was. So like there has to be like an understanding of like, all right, so like this is how you can show me that you actually care or whatnot.
Yeah.
So I mean that's at least that's what I think that's what you're kind of
Yeah,
asking.
no,
But
I
yeah,
always think about it because, I think I've been in a situation where the people that I'm surrounded with, I don't personally feel like they care. Um, but to them in their eyes, they do, and they do show that they care. So I'm always kind of like puzzled. It's like, well, do I just have to accept that this is the what they do and this is how they show it, or is it something that they should change and like kind of like not trying to point out who's in the wrong here, but trying to come up with the solution of like how to move forward,
yeah,
or how to feel loved by that person. And I
yeah,
think um I think when you're younger, you don't even know what your needs are, like emotional needs are. And then when you get older, you start to begin to understand yourself and what you need. And then where you start to kind of feel like how unloved you might have felt at times, you know?
Yeah, because you don't. I mean, like you're not seeing any like not rapport, but you're not seeing like love from one another or your family members or your brother or your sister or something like that. So it's hard to really feel that if you're not getting it from anywhere.
Yeah. But I think sometimes you don't understand that you aren't getting it until like you're out of a situation and you're
Yeah.
like, oh, wait, I wasn't receiving love, and this is why that I feel like
Hmm.
this. Um, but yeah, and I think I was reading a book yesterday. It's called The Silent Patient, and it actually it talked on that, like about love and, people who view love a certain way, um, they then, because they think that's what love is, they kind of like set themselves up for failure in like future
Yeah.
relationships, which can be so unfortunate because I feel like love is so, when it's real and when you have it, it's incredible.
Hmm.
It I feel like it completely changes you. Um and yeah, I mean, how would you, I guess we should have probably started with this. How would you define love?
I mean, like I was referring to the different forms of like the Greek terms of love. Like I was saying, I'm blanking out on exactly which ones right now. The only one that comes to mind is like agape, which is like you had said a second ago, is like sacrificial love. And I think, at least what I think, what love is or what it means to me is it's like all giving. Like you're willing to give your all for an individual or person, I'll even say like even family, and you're literally willing to like even give your life to like protect that person because you love them that much, like you care for them, you want to be there with them, like you want to always be by their side even when like times are tough, all of it, like it's like 100%, 110%, maybe 200%, like no, just like just everything, that's what I think, that type of love, like the love that me and you have, that's what I see, at least. Some other people will say, well, it's like, as long as they're willing to share their bank account with you, that means they love you, or as long as they're willing to like co-sign a car for you or something like that. I don't know, like just something, or they give you, I don't know, they send you texts or something. I don't know. They send you those little heart texts, and that means they love you. Like, for some, that's what they think it is. But
I
I
think
mean,
that's funny that
yeah,
you bring that up though, because when we first started dating, you weren't like the best like texter.
I'm
And
horrible at texting.
yeah,
I can 100% tell you that. That's
yeah,
100% honest.
and because that was an important method of communication for me, and that's actually because we were long distance. That's how I felt like, that you cared and that you
Yeah,
loved me. When like you didn't spend as much time like talking to me throughout the day or like whatever, I definitely was like, he must not like me. Like, and I think that's something we had to learn. Like, hey, like I appreciate when you text me in the morning or just check
yeah,
in. Like, you don't have to communicate with me all day, but like let me know that you're there. But that's also because that's what like how I saw relationships like around me going. He's like, oh well, her boyfriend texts her every morning. Like, this is how things should go. So like I think there's a great outside influence when you're in relationships of like what they should look like. Um, but yeah, I think love is, I kind of agree with you with like what love is. I do think that it's willing to like sacrifice everything for someone and like willing to, you know, stay when like obviously times get tough too. Because I think back to like how we did long distance, and whenever I would talk to like people about us doing long distance, they're like, "Oh, I just could never." I was like, "Okay, well, like take your current relationship, right? Like you love the person you're with, don't you? Well, like if that person needed to move away for some reason for a certain amount of time, like you wouldn't stay with them. Like I would always tell people, I was like, if you love them, why wouldn't you?
yeah.
You know? And I think I had a conversation with someone I went to high school with. Basically, they were in the situation where like they were doing long distance because their boyfriend went off to college in a different state, and they were staying in college wherever they were at the time. So they were going to be doing long distance. And eventually she did move to wherever her boyfriend went. And I think I had a conversation with her because she said, had I not moved, like when she did, we wouldn't have a relationship. And I was like, but if it's true love, shouldn't you? Like, if that's who you loved, like, and distance is the only thing separating you, like, are you saying that you really think that you guys would have broken up if you did one more year of long distance? And the thing is, I know it's hard because, like, you and I do it, you know? It wasn't an ideal, well, we don't do it now, but we did it.
Yeah.
You and I did it, and, like, it wasn't the ideal circumstance, but I also knew that I didn't want to be with anyone else, so it's like, you know, you do what you have to do. And sometimes I think, like, I don't think I know, like, everything. I think actually I should have, like, started the podcast with this because everyone...
And we assume that people know.
Yeah.
I know we said it before,
I need to
but,
let everyone know, like, I'm not an expert in any of these topics that I talk about. I'm merely just stating my opinion through my experiences.
That's what this whole podcast is
about. I try
Yeah.
not to, like, sound like I'm the expert or, like, give off that, like, intention, but thought I would just let you know because I've been getting a lot of hate on Instagram, which is fine. It's fine.
Yeah.
You know, everyone's entitled to their opinion. But I think, in my view, if you love someone, you're going to, like, make those sacrifices. Like, if I didn't love you, I just wouldn't have done long distance. I just would have ended it there. Be like, no, it's not worth it. So I don't think everyone views it that way. Everyone's like, well, you know, there's also that idea of right person, wrong timing.
Yeah, I've heard that too before. You know, like, well, it was a different way that you said that. I've heard it very similarly. Like, it's just not the right time for that person. Like,
Yeah.
And then later on, maybe, you know, they get back together or something like that. You see it in the movies all the time. You know, those cheesy movies.
I just think it's like, I could get, like, the wrong timing, you know, because maybe you just aren't, like, in the head for, like, a relationship at that point, but you do love that person and you'll make your way back or whatever. But I think that some people just give up too easily, you know? I think the idea sometimes is that people think that love should be easy, that, like, if this is the right person for you, it should be easy, it should be simple, everything should be seamless. And I think love is the exact opposite. It's messy, it's frustrating, it's overwhelming, it's in the book, it's kind of funny. I think this kind of goes along. In the book that I'm reading, Silent Patient, it says real love is, like, it's boring. And because, like, in the book, I shouldn't read the book. I can't read the book for people. Read The Silent Patient. It's really good. But I think that is true too. Like, once you're in, like, kind of the midst of a relationship, not that there's not any sparks or anything, but, you know, we're just content with, like, who we are as people, and, like, we're living our lives together, and
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be full of excitement. I mean, I do think our life is exciting, but for some people it's just coffee in the morning every morning, dinner at night together, and, like, that's their way of showing love and affection for each other. And I think too, with our relation especially, I've just learned how messy it can be.
Yeah.
Like, and I think that's something I didn't expect when, obviously, like, I fell in love, was the trials and tribulations we'd have. And I sound so cliche, but, like, it's been hard, like, between you and I. Like, we've had our own share of, like, heated arguments or, like, disagreements or, like, you know, days that felt like, what the fuck?
I think too, the other thing just to touch on is, like, I think everyone who is in a, you know, long relationship is bound to have, like, a disagreement, you know.
Yeah.
And I think if you're with someone, I mean, this is my opinion, if you're with someone that just agrees with you on everything 100%, that gets boring.
Yeah, I'm here to just shake it up, Cesar.
No, I mean, like, don't get me wrong, it's cool to have things that
You have in common.
you have in common, you know. But, like, if you're literally dating yourself, in the sense, like, if you're dating someone with someone who's exactly a carbon copy of you, but just, like, a female,
You would get
or whatever,
so annoyed though too,
like,
because then you would see yourself, you'd be like, am I that? annoying. Like, if I was dating me, I couldn't handle it. I literally couldn't. If I was
That's what
dating a
I'm saying. Very
male
common,
version
yeah.
of me,
Copy of you, like
I
literally.
couldn't, because I can't even handle myself.
But that's what I'm saying is that you'll end up like, yeah, whether it's you being annoyed by yourself, or like, yeah, like you're seeing like, wait, is that actually how I am, or whatever the case is.
I think
it's
so.
just,
I think this is a good thing that you bring up, because you always hear opposites attract, and I think in our case it is. I think Cesar and I are complete opposite. I'm a pretty shy, introverted individual. I like time with myself. I do like going out and doing things and socializing, but with people that I've always like established relationships with. And Caesar's like a social dog. Like,
Oh, I can
he'll talk
just
to
talk to
anyone,
anyone.
and he's just a complete opposite of everything that I am. Which I think for me, when we first started dating, was inspiring. And that's why I was attracted to you, because I was like, there's people like this out there. Like, but yeah, if we were the same person, I just wouldn't like it, because I don't even like me. So,
Yeah, that would, again, it would get boring. But then also the other thing, it's just like as you were describing, like when you're with someone and it like that you love them and it's boring. Like, oh, obviously after years and years of being married, and you're, let's say, like, when you're 80, 90 years old and your significant other passes away, like there's still those things that you do on a daily basis that will remind you of the person. And I remember seeing something on like Facebook or Instagram a few years ago, but it stuck in my mind. It was like a photo of this like girl. She took a picture of this like older man at like I think it was like at a Denny's, not even a Denny's. It was like some kind of like breakfast place, and he was sitting by himself. And he had a picture of his wife on the like next to him. I think on the left.
That.
I think you've seen it. And he I think I don't know if he ordered 2 plates or if he just ordered a plate for himself. But he was just there sitting by himself eating. But like maybe like his wife had recently passed away or something like that. But he was older. He was like probably like in his 70s. But I'm like, damn, like that's like talk about like loving someone like to the point where like I need to go like remember them and like all the little good times we had, like breakfast, whether like for example like us getting coffee, and stuff like that. Like that's one thing I'll always like have a connection with you for sure, forever, is like just coffee. By the way, coming soon, a coffee brand we're gonna make.
Cesar and I
But
are
anyways,
determined to make a coffee brand. I think that'd be the first like type of product
That would
that
be
I
the
would
first
sell.
one.
It's definitely coffee.
for sure. But yeah,
Just gotta work out, some details.
Details,
Minor
yeah.
details. Well, when I met you, there was a lot of things going in my head when I met you. When I met Cesar, I was about to go back for my sophomore year of college. So I was 19. I hadn't turned 20 yet because I met you in August and I wasn't going to turn 20 till January. And I knew that you were a bit older, and I was like, I've got to seem like I'm not a child. Like, I've got to be mature. I've got to drink coffee. So, yeah, and then I just started drinking. I was like, okay, so kind of started there. But, like, it makes me think of you because I remember that week, and I'm like, the first time we ever really talked was over a cup of coffee. And, yeah, it reminds me of you. So, like, yeah, there's always going to be things that remind me of you, or things that I just only do with you, like I keep for like our relationship to make it like special. Yeah, it's nice. I don't know how we got into that.
oh, because I was talking about how like
The old person.
the old person, yeah,
The old man.
yeah, how like that really shows that even at the when you lose someone you love, like that love is still there.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, you're always gonna
Yeah.
love them. I think that goes with like people though too, not even just like relationships like me and you have, but like friendships. Sometimes when you lose a friend, you're always
Yeah.
gonna care for that person. You're
That's
always
true.
gonna love them, but there's a silly quote. It's like some like relationships are only meant for like a season. Like they're to teach
That's
you.
what I heard.
Yeah, and like that's it sucks because like it's true. And I know I've had friendships where I really cared about someone, but it wasn't in the cards for us to like remain friends for a long time. And we were meant to teach each other and then like kind of part ways, and like
Yeah.
it sucks because I think I care about people like immensely, and I I put my all into friendships, I put my all into relationships, and like putting that effort in sometimes for it to just feel like it goes down the drain can be a little frustrating. But I think that's life. And
You learn a lot of lessons along the way too.
yeah, I love learning lessons. Do you believe though in soulmates? Soup snakes?
I mean, I like the colloquial term.
Colloquial.
Like soulmates, like there's like one person for you out there, and like the what is it, like 5 billion people in the world?
7 billion.
7 billion now. I forget how many people.
Probably more now.
Not necessarily. Your face.
You don't think I'm the one
No, hold on.
person for you?
Well, only because okay. Logically speaking, if we're looking at numbers,
Okay.
all right.
Love lacks logic.
It's as in Interstellar. It's what is it?
I love that Interstellar quote. I can't remember.
It's like love is not bound by time or something like that, or space. It's
I have to look it up.
yeah, you have to look it up. But while you look it up, I mean,
flash flood winning too.
oh, you got it too. I mean, I think like if you look at logically speaking, I don't think there's just thing as soulmates. I mean, if you think about this is crazy, right? Like a majority of people, that
I will say this is Cesar's fatal flaw is that he always has to think logically.
I think logically. That's the first
I
thing.
think logically about nothing.
No, I think logically first.
Okay, but the things I know, I'm not trying to interrupt
but
you,
yeah.
but me saying that reminds me of Michael Scott. I know nothing.
I'm about to put that in there. Oh my gosh.
But go on.
But looking at, you gotta think about the fact that a majority of people, men, women, whatever, like they don't leave there's a lot of people that don't even ever leave their state. They only stay in their city for their whole life. So obviously, sooner or later you're gonna run into someone who you have in common with, and then you end up falling in love. But what's to say that if you had the ability and the money for you to move to another country, another state, to not be able to find someone who you have in common with very similarities, and then you end up falling in love with them, or another country, go to Europe or France or South America, it's a continent, South Africa or Uganda or Australia. Like the internet's actually shown the ability for people to like find love in the farthest of places, and then literally people move. Didn't you follow a couple on YouTube where like I think Gabriel Conti and Jess, isn't she Australian and he's American, and then he ended up like I don't know if he went out there or something like that.
So the way that they met, yeah, I did follow them.
Yeah,
I
you
used
used
to
to
love
follow
watching
them,
their videos. The way that they met is like she was Australian. Gabriel Conte at this point is already kind of like an influencer, but she
Yeah.
like messages him on like Instagram, like saying, "Oh, I'm going to LA. Like, do you know any like places like to go to?" And yeah, they ended up meeting up, and yeah, they're
That's
now
it.
married.
Yeah, and have a baby now, right?
Yeah, they have a baby.
baby.
Now.
But yeah, anyways, I
the
digress.
quote from the quote from Interstellar is, "Love is the one thing that transcends time and space. Maybe we should trust that, even if we cannot understand it." Love is not I think in my mind, love is not logical. Sometimes, like, obviously there's logical reasons that I love you, right? But like, I think about how I honestly, I shouldn't have met you,
It was
There-
fate. Would you say there was fate? behind
Yeah,
it?
like there was like I wasn't going to go to that wedding that I went to. I had other plans in line for that week. I wasn't gonna go. So like, had I not gone, had I not gone, we never would have met, or at least not when we did. And we wouldn't be dating. That week started everything, and like it's like a domino like effect. Like it started everything, and I think about that a lot because I feel like it was fate. I feel like there was like a divine intervention of like me coming to the realization that I should, one, go to this wedding, and two, like, I met you, and I like, had I not, none of this would have happened, and like so many things in my life wouldn't have happened. I would have been in a very different place, I think. So I don't think there's like a lot of
that's where that's where the logic ends, and that's where like you believing it's a faith, like you having faith in someone or in not the idea of someone, but like more in the that's where we don't know. That's the unknown, and that's where I do think I agree. I'm not like fully agree with that quote, but it's like we don't. There's a lot of things that we don't know that we can't. Our human mind can't comprehend, and you're 100% right. Maybe like 100 years from now, our children's like do something great, and if it wasn't for us going to that wedding, like
that's why like time travel is not necessarily good, because like you don't want to go back and change the past, because one little thing has such an impact. Effect. I think about that all the time, because there are so many tiny things that have like influenced me or got me to where I was. And so as much as like we hate some of the things that happen to us, we shouldn't wish for them to change, because they help us get where we are.
Yeah.
I don't know. I've always believed in the idea of soulmates, I think it's so, like, nice, I guess, or sweet to think that there's just one person out there that, like, completes you. But then I also have beef with, like, the idea of, like, you're my other half, or you make me whole, because I'm also that, like, that person that is, like, you need to be whole, like, with just you. Like, I'm someone who wants to be, like, really independent, so I want to be whole by myself. Like, I don't want you to be the reason that I am a complete person, I love you, and I want you to be obviously a good part of my life, but I don't want to, like, I feel like when you say someone is, like, the other half of you, it makes me whole, there's an idea that you can't live without them. And maybe at some point you might have to, or, like, I hope that would never happen. Like, I don't want to live without you, but I also want to be able to be sufficient without you, feel happy without you. They shouldn't. There's a video that Will Smith put like a while ago online on YouTube that says your partner shouldn't be like the source of your happiness, like they should make you happy, but they shouldn't be the only source of your happiness. You need to find happiness in other places, because to put all that pressure on you to say, hey, you have to make me happy, you have to do, that's a lot of pressure on a person, and I've had to realize that too, is like setting, I feel like this is such corporate lingo, but like setting realistic expectations for relationships. I can't expect you to handle things that I can't handle myself, So I think going into love at first, I thought that someone should, like, you should complete me. I can't stop thinking about The Office. There's a part where Michael's like looking at you, like, hey Jan, you complete me. Yeah, I think that, I don't know, it's nice to think that there is someone, just one person out there for you in like 7 billion people.
Yeah. No, I agree with you on that for sure. The fact that we need to be able to not just rely on someone else's happiness to make us happy.
Yeah.
And there is different forms for people to be happy. There's different ways to find happiness, true happiness, like that comes from a source that's never ending, and then we can share that with each other because we're both really happy. Like, it's hard. I'm sorry. It's that didn't make any sense at all. But yeah, that's true. Yeah, I mean, it's just like, it doesn't have to come from Will Smith for Will Smith to say that, but that's definitely true.
Yeah, no, yeah. I was just referencing the video because it was I think before that I always saw it as like, you needed to be the source of my happiness. You needed to be like someone to like fill in the gaps that I had in my life. But I feel like if you look at love like that, you'll never be satisfied, because a person can't take on that kind of pressure, that kind of pressure to be everything that someone else needs. Now, I do think that you are a great support system. I think that you've been there in times of need, but I also realize that like I can't be so reliant on you to fill in those gaps. I've got to find other ways to fill in those gaps. It's not healthy, I think, is the main thing, is like to rely so heavily on someone. And I don't know. I always think about pressure. I feel like an immense amount of pressure on myself, and I'm like, oh, if I'm feeling pressure, Caesar's probably feeling some type of pressure too, because I'm putting all of this on him, and it goes back to just knowing like the purpose of relationships, and but I saw this the other day, and it was the idea of like, should you like date to marry, or like, date to date. I used to always think like, when I was in high school, like, oh, just date people, that's what you do. But then when I got to college, I was like, I don't want to waste time in just any relationship. Like, any relationship that I have, I want to see a future with. And
Yeah.
obviously, when you first meet someone, you don't know where that's going. So you do got to spend time getting to know someone. But there's a certain point where you're like, is this worth continuing or is it not?
Yeah, I think it's oh man, I blanked on the actual word of what you're literally saying. It's like you have to I literally just blinked on it, but basically like, yeah, you should date to find out if you want to be with somebody, or whether you're just trying to just, especially nowadays, like the modern form of dating is to just date people. That's it. There's no end.
I don't think it's a modern form. I just think people are like, it's kind of confusing to figure out what you want in the world too.
Yeah, and some people, I'm just saying, like, some people, like, I'll be 100% even like on my journey to like find you and all of that. Like, I was like just dating just to date, and I was like, never thought about, oh yeah, I want to one day marry somebody and settle down. Like, that wasn't on the back of my mind at all for like a long time. So but that was like the journey that I had to get to where I'm at now. And that people are on different journeys in their life to figure things out. But yeah, it's like you're like contemplating, like, I don't know if that's the word, but yeah, you're just,
I think it's just intentional.
yeah.
Like, I've known people that were in relationships where like they loved the person, they really did, but they had varying views on like marriage, and at some point that was gonna be the reason that they don't end up together, because like one person wanted something and the other person wanted another, and even though they loved each other, there's some things like you don't want to sacrifice for.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that, I don't know, my mindset, I'm not saying mine is the right mindset at all, but my mindset was, when I was in college, I was like, I don't want to waste time with people that I'm not going to have a future with. And I know that sounds silly, especially when you're so young and in college, but I also was so driven to make sure like I'm accomplishing everything I want to, and I'm like, I really don't like wasting time. But time is something, it feels like, is always short supply. There's so much time, but so little time. So
It's funny you bring up time, and I think, like, man, we live in a world now where, most average age of a human being nowadays is like, what, like I don't know if it's 70 or something like that, but if you go back like 200-300 years, like 1500s, 1400s, like, you're old if you're 35. Like, you're like, your life expectancy like in the 1200s was so low that like you were like constantly, like, you were like on, whether you had a farm or whatever the case is, like, you're working, like, you're looking to find somebody soon, because you're, not to say you're like, you're gonna die soon,
your
but
time is coming.
yeah, I mean, like, there's so many things you could have died from back in the day, and we have so many, modern medicine has made our lives, we have more time now, basically. That's what I'm trying to say, than we do before.
It's funny that you say that we have more time. Like, I feel like
Yeah.
everyone feels like we like don't have enough time, because time goes by like so fast, and sometimes it feels like it goes by so slow. Like, the month of January, everyone at the beginning of the year feels like it drags on, and then the rest of the year like zooms by. I mean, it feels like the year just started, honestly, and now we're almost in August.
Yeah, we're literally
by
August,
the time we post this will be in August, and it's absolutely insane. But there's some people, I think, out there that just, they're willing to, risk that time, because, I think at the end of the day too, you have to look out for you and what you want, what you need. And with love, that looks different for everyone.
Yeah.
What they're looking for in a relationship, what they're looking for in love, it differs. So like, I think that's why it's like, there's that saying that advice is like, no, opinions are like assholes. Everyone has one.
It's classic.
And because with this kind of stuff too, there's no like one right answer. I don't think there is. I think for a lot of things in life, there's not one right answer. A lot of roads lead to the same place. Like there's a lot of different.
All roads lead to Rome. That was a classic.
That's a saying.
That was a saying.
Oh, I never heard that. I remember talking to you about this because when I first moved here to Vegas, I started to learn my way around pretty quickly. But I'd be driving with you in the car, and I'd be driving, and you'd be like, "Oh, why don't you go this way?" I'm like, "Well, you can also get there this way." And I kind of thought it as like a metaphor. It's like there's literally just so many different ways to get to the same space, and it also goes back to a podcast we did on comparison. Like your road and your journey might look different than someone else's, but that doesn't mean that you won't end up in the same place. So even with like what we talked about with Mike yesterday on our podcast with the CEO of my company, well, his company. I just always the company I work for. I always say my company because it is the company I work for. He was saying how like when you set goals, like they're setting the goal, right? Setting a really realistic goal, and then there's like planning how you're gonna get there.
And working back, right?
I don't know how this relates, but I just thought of it because, we have these expectations and we have these things we want to achieve, but how often do we actually like think about like how we're actually going to get there? Sometimes it's just so easy to just sit back and be like, oh, it happened. If it happens, it happens. But there's a lot of work we can put into, things to make them happen. I don't think love is one of those things. I think, I don't think I don't think you can force yourself to love someone.
No.
If you're in a relationship, oh man, I really don't like this person, but I want to get married, I want to have a husband by this time. You shouldn't do that because you're gonna end up miserable, right? Lord, there's an episode of Friends. This is like a TikTok trend, and it's like name a scene from Friends that you didn't understand when you were a kid, but you understand now. And it's Rachel's 30th birthday, and she's really upset about turning 30. And she's like, it's okay. Like I can still get my life figured out. She goes, I want to have kids by 35, so that means I need to get pregnant at 34. She goes, I would like to know the guy for at least a year, so and so she's figuring out like, oh shit, she goes, I should have had this done by 30 if I'm on the right track, right? So it's like when you try to plan for that kind of stuff I feel like love is very spontaneous. You can't plan to meet the love of your life. I felt like when I was trying to meet someone, I just didn't like any of the prospects. Like I was like I said, I was on Tinder, I was on like dating apps, and I was like, these people are not. This is not the move. And then like in high school, I feel like I was so thirsty for like love. Honestly, it's a shameful thing, but I wanted someone to love me. I was like, just love me. And I was that person that people were like, oh, she's adorable, but like a sister type adorable, not like she's hot,
I'm telling you, those movies, those Disney movies, whatever.
Dude, they had me in like a chokehold of like what I thought love was.
Yeah. As I'm telling you, culture has a lot to do with like.
Yeah, I was like, I need to date the quarterback of the football team. I was trying to manifest all of these things happening for me, and it never did. And I think honestly, I was trying too hard. And then when I stopped, I had literally the week before like I met you, I was like, like I'm giving up. I was like, I'm not gonna look for anyone. I'm just gonna go. I'm gonna focus on me. And then I met you. It was like poof. It's like, and I feel like that's how it happens. It's like when you least expect it, which is what no one who's looking for love wants to hear. But when you least expect it, you meet the person that
you're supposed to be with.
Yeah. Like literally, for instance, perfect example, and I hope Delsa doesn't mind me saying this, but like me and Delsa and Isa, those were my roommates from college. We were in this the Hispanic Latino Student Union at FSU, and that is how Delsa met her current boyfriend. They've been dating for like forever now, and it was at HLSU, and they were even just like friends. They were just like friends, and like had they not been in that club together, they might have not met. Like might have not been together. The way we meet people, I feel like, is like very random, and there's like I think the word is like serendipity.
Serendipity, I think that is the word. What does that mean again? I haven't heard that word in a long time.
Serendipity. The occurrence and development of events by chance in a happy or a beneficial way. And I think that is. I think like that's how it felt for me. It's like I saw you, like literally I want to make a movie of like our relationship, because when I met Cesar, that's what it felt like. I was in my cousin's car. We were transporting stuff to go to the house that we were staying at for the wedding. And Cesar pulls up in his little car real fast because he was supposed to take like
I think I was supposed to take one of your cousins to
to like wherever she needed
yeah.
to go, but they had already like taken her. And so you got out of the car, you talked to Amanda for like a minute, and I was like looking at him like, who is this guy? And I'm just sitting in Amanda's car. I'm like, who is this guy? And like, I feel like, I don't know if this is like me imagining, but I feel like we like exchanged glances.
We did.
And then like, yeah,
I do remember that.
and then later that day I met you like for real, and I was like, this is different. Like, I feel like it felt like so different, like than anything I've ever experienced. And like, yeah, and the other thing is too, like, it didn't have to end in a relationship, right? Like, because we didn't live in the same state. Like, I stayed in Vegas that week, and then I went back home to Tallahassee, and we just stayed in contact and like kind of decided. And I remember my roommates asking like, are you really gonna date this man? Like, are you gonna do long distance? I was like, well, if he asked me out, like, yeah. And technically, for being real, Cesar never asked me out. He literally never said the words, will you be my girlfriend? Ever.
We talked about this. I think I remember. I
He did propose though. He did ask me to marry him. So like, I guess
I could have sworn I did ask. That's why. Like,
no, literally the way Cesar. Okay, that's the other thing. That's the other movie part of our relationship. Not to brag or anything. Cesar and I relationship is not perfect by far. We annoy the shit out of each other on a daily basis, especially with how much time we spend together. But we love each other nonetheless. And we went on a date. Cesar took me to, I had told him, this is why I loved this man. I had told Cesar that I had been dying to go to Cheesecake Factory because at the time I was 19, never been, ever, and I've always wanted to go. And so I had been telling Cesar that for like a while. It just came up in conversation, and he took me to Cheesecake Factory on a date, and we sat there awkwardly talking, and like, it was so awkward. We were so like nervous, I think, the both of us. And then he asked me at the end of like when we were finishing up a meal, he was like, oh, do you want me to take you home, or can I like take you somewhere else? And I was like, well, he hasn't asked me out yet, so we've got to go somewhere else. And so we went to this place called here in Vegas. It's called Nelson's Landing. Mind you, it's like 11 p.m. I put a lot of trust in you. You could have been a serial killer. He was taking me out to a dark ass mountain range like type thing. Yeah. And I just trusted him. I literally put my trust in this man. And we got out of the car and we laid on this rock looking up the stars, because you could see the stars like so clearly that night.
I love that place.
And we were just talking. And I feel like Cesar was trying to get me to admit my feelings for him, but I wasn't going to admit my feelings until he admitted his feelings for me. And I saw a shooting star for the first time that night, and I felt like crying. I was like, this is so magical. This was like my Disney movie. And
Disney movie.
Yeah, and then he never asked me out, but we started dating. So
yeah, I remember that. I love going on Nelson's Landing.
Yeah, I know. And that's actually where Cesar proposed to me. And it was just the two of us. It wasn't at nighttime, but it was just the two of us. And yeah, and I said yes. And I was like, obviously we wouldn't be here. That'd be really awkward.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was, I think, we got to where we wanted to be. And I think it was, fate leading us there. I don't think, things were, it's interesting the way that things happen. But with that being said, I think that this has been a great time. Cesar and I don't have all the answers on most of these topics. We are not experts.
We're not psychologists. We're not like freaking family therapists.
We're just doing this because we feel like we've learned a lot from like our experiences, and we hope that you can learn from us as well, or just enjoy listening to the conversation. Yeah, and we hope that you enjoyed this episode. This has been Growing Together with me, Sonny Vasquez.
And me, Cesar Santos.
We hope to see you again next week.
See you guys later. Oh, sorry. Thumbnail, and then we can do it like a little silent test. Did you want to move the cactus? You sure? You want to keep it on that setup? Okay. Oh, let me move this because this isn't actually in the way of my face. All right, ready? Camera. Can we do one just to make sure? Cactus on the way.
Oh, because then you'll pick that one.
Well, because I'm letting. Okay, well, you'll see how. Because sometimes I have to crop us in and it won't fit in frame, but we'll try. We'll try this one for this one. Okay, and then I got you. Oh, silent detection.